Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. After around 50 hours in Bannerlord, I feel like I can give you some proper combat tips. It seems like a lot of people are struggling with combat because there is no auto blocking mechanic in the game. But Tailwords confirmed that this feature will be added in the single player mode with some future patch, so there's that. But despite this, I think that you should absolutely try to learn how to block manually, because it's a really rewarding mechanic and the game is pretty much meant to be played like that. It's absolutely essential if you want to play in the multiplayer mode as well. After you finish the tutorial quest, the first thing you should do is find the nearest city and enter the arena. Practicing in arena is the best method to learn how to fight one or two enemies at the same time. It's a little bit different when you're on the field with a lot of soldiers, but we'll get to that as well. This is very important for a few reasons. You will learn how most weapons work and how AI works. There is no penalty for losing fights, but you can win some gold if you bring down a couple of opponents, and if you win, you'll get 250 gold, which is pretty good in the beginning. Anyway, let's learn how to block. For a couple of fights, just go in there and try to block every attack. Don't attack at all, just find your opponents and try to block every attack. There will be archers that will bother you, but even if you die, just start again and do the same. And you should block with your weapon, not with your shield. We'll get to the shield as well, but for now just use your weapon. Once you learn how to block with a weapon, blocking with a shield will be much easier because it's more forgiving. You can set the difficulty for damage received however you want, but I recommend you to set the AI difficulty to good. I would say it's not a huge difference in these fights, but good AI will try to use some tricks like faking their attacks. And this also means that AI will behave smarter in huge fights as well, so keep that in mind. My damage settings are on realistic here, so it only takes a few hits to die in arena. But like I said, keep practicing blocking with a weapon for at least 10 or 20 minutes, and you'll improve your defense quite a bit. After you're done with that, we're going to practice blocking with a shield. Even though blocking with a shield is more forgiving because you won't always have to block in the direction of the attack, it's still recommended to try and block in the right direction. But why? Well, it's simple really, the angle of attack is equally important as the attack direction. Here are a few examples to show you what I mean. I keep hitting these NPCs in their protected side because I'm aiming really high with my weapon. If I would attack at a lower angle but in the same direction, they would easily block my attacks with a shield. So yeah, angles can be really important in fights. There will be situations when NPCs hit you from similar angles, so it's always best if you try to keep your shield in the direction of the attack. Although these situations are not so common in single player, but you can definitely use these angles to your advantage in fights. I think that shields are the most useful for blocking arrows and projectiles in general, and to protect your back from projectiles as well, especially in big fights. Once you're more comfortable with blocking, let's start doing some damage. Self-defense approach to combat is a basic strategy, but you can find a lot of success with it. This means to never attack your enemy first, block their initial attack, try to hit them, block the second attack, and so on, you get the picture. It will work for a lot of encounters, but it's not always so simple, and it depends on the enemy you're fighting and the weapons you're using. For example, if your opponent has a slower two-handed weapon like a spear or an axe, and you're attacking with a smaller one-handed weapon, you can use a different approach. Once you block the initial attack, you can try and hit the next two attacks in the row. If you successfully land the first hit, there is a high chance that you land the second hit as well, because your opponent won't have a lot of time to react properly. And your chance to get hit while performing this 1-2 technique is really low because again, you have the speed advantage. But it's really important to block the initial attack first, so keep that in mind. However, if your first attack gets blocked, you shouldn't try to chain the second attack because there is a high chance that you'll get hit. Only try to chain two attacks if you successfully land the first one. Bannerlord allows you to cancel your attacks at any given time by pressing the block button, so if you think you're going to get hit before your attack lands, get your block up. This is definitely a little bit trickier to pull off and you'll need some practice. Needless to say that playing aggressively and just swinging your weapon like a maniac won't get you far. All of this is much harder to pull off in fights with multiple opponents of course, but it's not impossible. When you fight 2 or 3 NPCs at once, you should try and move to the side and keep your eye on the closest opponent. It won't always work, but I think it's the best way to handle multiple opponents. Unless you have more than 4 NPCs on your neck and you're not on your horse, then you're pretty much screwed. One more advanced technique that I like to use in certain situations is the 360 spinning attack. And I assure you, this is not only to look fancy, it's actually a really good move. I usually try to pull it off after one successful hit, and more often than not it works great. Even if it doesn't land, you're creating a bit more space between you and your opponent. Here's a couple of those situations. And it works great in multiplayer mode as well. So those were some of my personal tips for improving your attacking and blocking in smaller fights. Now let's go over some tips for bigger fights. Keep in mind that fights like this will mostly depend on how you command your troops and not by your individual skill in fight. I had the most success with one particular tactic. I leave all the rank 1 recruits in the first group, then I take all the stronger infantry and place them all in one separate group. Once the fight starts, I order the stronger infantry to follow me and I push my recruits to go forward while we try to flank the enemy. Archers should always be separated somewhere, and if the terrain allows it, you should put them on some hills so they won't get mowed down by enemy cavalry. This is not a huge fight, but this tactic works in bigger fights as well. It's especially good in the beginning, when you finally gather around 50 troops to fight for you. Even if you don't have a lot of higher ranked troops, take some recruits and put them in the separate group that will follow you. Now, of course, this only works if you're playing on foot, but I actually think that playing on your horse is really hard in the beginning, especially when you don't have your own cavalry. I have lost a lot of recruits in both of these fights, but those who survived will get upgraded. And if you look closer, I only lost a couple of higher level troops. The last thing I want to mention in this video is skirmish PvP. I know that a lot of you won't be interested in multiplayer, but hear me out. If you play a couple of matches in skirmish mode and you learn how to block versus human opponents, when you come back to single player, it will be much easier to block versus NPCs. And not just block of course, but fight as well. Multiplayer is really fun in Bannerlord and you should definitely try it at least. And that would conclude our basic combat tips for Bannerlord. Don't forget to subscribe for more content and click on the bell icon so you don't miss any future uploads. Special thanks to my Patreons, and if you as well want to support this channel in the long run, consider checking out those links in the description. That will be all, and I'll see you in the next one.